Connor Zilisch will join the Cup Series on a full-time basis in 2026 with Trackhouse Racing, and Kaulig Racing will form a Ram truck team in 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just some streamers really quickly. We've only got one paint scheme to look at, and it's Tyler Ingram's 2025 Tommy Ellis throwback that we'll see this weekend in the Truck Series race at Darlington. I gotta say, Kligerman Racing knocked this one out of the park. The colors on this truck look really solid. They look very, very good. McAnally's had some really good paint schemes. This one's no exception. It looks really good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Darlington Raceway. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 4-wide finish from Daytona International Speedway. As if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race last night at Daytona, you saw an incredible and fantastic finish where Ryan Blaney made a big move to the outside going 4-wide and made a move to the outside and took the race win. It was owned by the NASCAR Insights account that the top 4 finishers were only separated by 49 1/1000ths of a second separated between the top 4. That is the closest top 4 finish in NASCAR Cup history. We've seen the closest 3-wide finish in NASCAR Cup history from the race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. But now we have the record for the closest 4-wide finish in NASCAR Cup history, and the closest for the top 4 have been as well. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. The racing I thought was really good, and it was pretty impressive to see a really close and really solid finish, how close everybody was. So pretty impressive to see the top 4 as close as they were, and pretty great to see a fantastic finish at Daytona. Racing hasn't been as good in the next-gen car at Daytona, so we saw a fantastic, great finish. Pretty impressive. We had the closest finish for 4 drivers close in Cup history. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Daytona Summer Race. As it was reported by Jordan Bianchi and many reporters in the industry that according to them, President of Daytona Fred Keller told people at Daytona the race last night for the Coke Zero Sugar 400 was the largest crowd for the summer race at Daytona since 2018, which was 7 years ago. You could tell there was a lot of energy at the racetrack, and I think that's absolutely phenomenal to see because the last couple years, I feel like the crowd, while it's been increasing, it hasn't really gone back up to levels had in like 2010 or even like 2015, 10 years ago. But I think the crowd this time around was really, really good, and to have a crowd as big as it was, we don't know exactly the exact number for sure, but I think a lot of people who went to the race had a very enjoyable and fun experience. It was a big weekend for a lot of big announcements as well, so I think it's really impressive to see the crowd as big as it was for the first time in quite some time. Really glad to see a large crowd for. Good to see that we had the largest crowd for a Cup Series race at Daytona in nearly a decade. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dennis Hauger. With Dennis Hauger scoring, I believe, a top 5 finish in the Indy NXT race in Milwaukee, he has won the 2025 Indy NXT Championship, picking up his first ever championship in Indy NXT. Massive congratulations to Dennis Hauger. Dennis Hauger has had an unbelievable season in the NXT. I think he's won like 6 or 7 races so far this year, and he's been extremely dominant on pretty much every type of track so far throughout the 2025 season. And while drivers like Miles Rowe and Salvador De Alba have been able to pick up wins in the NXT, it's been Dennis Hauger throughout the whole entire year who's been extremely dominant, who's had an unbelievable and great season. Once again, congratulations to him on winning the NXT Championship. He's earned it, and it's a well-deserved win. I think he's going to be someone to watch for many, many years to come, who could be an IndyCar next year. Not sure about that at this point. Nonetheless, congratulations to him on winning the Indy NXT title. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Greg Hoffman. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Greg Hoffman will become the person who will run day-to-day operations at North Wilkesboro and becomes a person to take over operations at North Wilkesboro effective immediately. Greg Hoffman has been working for many years with Speedway Motorsports Incorporated, has been with them for many, many years, and I think he's going to do a really solid job running North Wilkesboro as, of course, they will be getting their first points paying race at the track for the Cup Series since 1996 when they raced there on Sunday night on July 19th. I think someone like him, who has a ton of experience, I think he's going to be able to do a really good job bringing a lot to the table and really helping the track get up to speed and ready to go for those events. And I think we all know how exciting the races are going to be at North Wilkesboro because I think we're going to see a pretty solid race because we've seen some better racing with short tracks, obviously, in the next-gen era. And you got Dale Jr., who's going to be broadcasting that race, which is going to be phenomenal to see. He's going to have a lot of shoes to fill to do a really, really good job. Nonetheless, I think he's going to do a really solid job for sure, and congrats to Greg Hoffman on getting the chance and opportunity to be the person that will run day-to-day operations for the NASCAR Cup Series race at North Wilkesboro and take over North Wilkesboro operations going forward for the foreseeable future. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the IndyCar race from Milwaukee. So, of course, last night you had the Cup Series race at Daytona, but today you had the IndyCar race from the Milwaukee Mile. And we saw a very intriguing and kind of complex race. This race, for the most part, though, will be dominated by Alex Palou. Alex Palou, I believe, led nearly 200 of the 250 laps that took place in this race. And it looked like Alex Palou was going to cruise the victory lane. He got benefited from having some timely cautions. He had Will Power spun out early in the race. And then he had him getting a really big lead at one point, almost having a 10-second lead. And it looked like after late caution that took place with around 40 or 50 laps to go, it looked like Alex Palou was going to cruise the victory. But with 32 or 33 laps to go, around 40 laps to go in this race, a caution would come out for a little bit of a shower that would hit the racetrack. There was no rain in the forecast for the event. I checked the weather throughout the day. So it was just this pop-up shower that came out of nowhere that no one was expecting at that point. He actually would stay out, and this would give a lot of drivers like Christian Rasmussen, Pat O'Ward, a couple other people like Alexander Rossi, and many other drivers in the field the opportunity to come down pit road to get fresh tires, because tires did mean quite a bit. On the restart, Christian Rasmussen got by Alexander Rossi and Pat O'Ward and was a high sky on fresh tires and used that outside and gained a ton of ground at Alex Palou and made the pass for the race lead with 15 laps to go, a daring and wild move to get the race lead and pulled out the big lead and would come off the corner and pick up his first career IndyCar victory, becoming the first driver to win their first race since Christian Lundgaard at Toronto in 2023. And I believe the first time we see Ed Carpenter Racing pick up a win at IndyCar since I believe the race at Indianapolis road course back in 2021 when Rinus VeeKay picked up the win. Mass congratulations to Christian Rasmussen. He's ruffled some feathers, there's no denying that at this point. But you cannot deny about Christian. He's a really talented race car driver. He's absolutely earned this win, did a phenomenal job in this race, put together an unbelievable run to get out there and pick up that win. Massive congratulations, Christian, on getting it done. A pretty emotional victory for him. Good to see him get out there, get Ed Carpenter win a well-deserved and earned victory for Christian Rasmussen. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Parker Kligerman. Now, we do have a couple of Parker Kligerman stories to talk about today on the channel. First one revolves around picking up the victory in the race at Daytona. According to the NASCAR Insights account, with Parker Kligerman picking up the win, despite the fact he will not get credited for the win because Connor Zilisch did start the race, he becomes the first mid-relief driver to win a race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series since 2007. Now, that race was where Eric Almirola had started the race at the Milwaukee Mile, and then he had the end of that car in the early portion of the race, despite the fact he was dominating because Denny Hamlin, who had the Rockwell Automation sponsorship at the time, Denny Hamlin got back to the track and got in the car and finished and picked up the win in victory. Parker Kligerman absolutely earned this win, and for him to have a really good car like he did, because he had a fantastic car, taking the 88 to victory lane was incredible. Obviously, Connor Zilisch is credited for the win. But you think about this for Connor. 12 straight top 5 finishes, which is absolutely phenomenal. His average finish in the last 12 races is at 2.08, and he's won 6 of the last 12 Xfinity Series races and 5 of the last 6 altogether. It's been a phenomenal stretch for Connor, but I think for Parker, it's an amazing deal for him. Technically, he won't get credit with the win, but I personally think we should credit him for the win personally because I think he absolutely earned it, did a fantastic job. But again, I don't know how you do the points and divvy that up at this point. Nonetheless, congratulations, Parker, on breaking his own record, and good for Connor as well, because while Connor lost the regular season points lead, he'll probably have a good chance to get it done. I think Connor's domination in this series is going to continue. Good to see Connor get the win and also Parker get a potential win as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cadillac. As it was reported by Adam Stern late Thursday evening that Cadillac is close to securing both Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez for its first Formula One lineup for the organization in 2026, with, according to the press release, it sounds like an announcement in regards to this could come sometime in the next week or so before we get to the race coming up in just a little bit. I believe the Dutch Grand Prix. This is a really big deal. We've been hearing both these names have been associated with the program. We have heard that a younger driver could be associated with this program for next year as well. We have thought maybe the lineup was going to be one veteran driver like Valtteri Bottas or Sergio Perez. There was some talk about Jack Crawford going over to Cadillac for next year. He could become maybe the reserve driver for the program next year. That is certainly a possibility. But for Valtteri, if this is the lineup for the team, I actually really like this move because I think both drivers are actually talented, and you'd be starting a team off with 2 veteran drivers. You'll have Valtteri Bottas, who is someone that can get the best out of equipment in Formula One. He has taken underfunded cars and brought them up to the front and run well in those cars and has won races in top-level equipment as well. And while Sergio Perez struggled at the end of his tenure with Red Bull, Sergio Perez is not that bad of a driver. I get things kind of went wrong for him at the end, but I think if this is your lineup for next year, I think it is generally a very, very solid lineup. So I like the lineup they've got going into next year. We're going to have to wait and see, though, if this is the official lineup that we're going to have for 2026. I think that's a big question, if this is truly going to be a lineup we're going to have. I kind of hope it is, because I think you can really build around this lineup going into next year. If it is, we'll wait to see for sure if it ends up being it, but I hope it is, because I think this would be a really strong lineup for the team and organization. I think it'd be a great lineup for the team going into next year, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Nashville Fairgrounds. Now, we got a report earlier this week by Adam Stern that it sounded like a deal was getting very close to being done for the Nashville Fairgrounds to have some sort of partnership between the Metro Council, NASCAR, and the city as well. But there's been a report that went out by Fox 17 Nashville that originally said they had a deal reached. It turns out, according to Fox 17 Nashville, they had to retract their statement, so it's not, as of right now, a deal is still not done at this point. But one of the people that's in the opposition spoke about this, and the main person behind this says, residents near the fairgrounds who lead the opposition of SMI acknowledged they moved there because they knew the track was there, but they thought the track was going to be closing very, very soon. First of all, I don't really understand how you can look at information and see that think that a track is closing. I don't know what people are telling you that. You should probably do your research really quickly, because the National Fairgrounds is still going on at this point. These people that have been in the opposition against the National Fairgrounds have been very, very frustrating to listen to. I think there's some concerns for sure around the National Fairgrounds, like parking, among other things, are going to be a big question if they do get this renovated in the future. But I got to say, some of this is absolutely petty from some of these people at this point, because I think that the fairgrounds can absolutely thrive. And a lot of these people who've been against it are really for the soccer stadium. And just for the record, the soccer stadium is still going to be very, very loud, and it's almost going to be as loud, if not louder, than when you hear race cars around a racetrack. So I really don't get or fully understand where the frustration lies. It's just that they don't want a racetrack around, and they don't even care about the history of the track at this point. The National Fairgrounds has been around since 1904. Just for the record, the soccer stadium has only been around for a short period of time. So I really don't get this. I get the full opposition why they're trying to do it, but I just don't think it's a good move personally, because they don't really want it. I hate that they're trying to screw this up at this point. Screw up a lot of history, but again, they don't care about history. All they care about is money and getting what they want. I think some of this opposition is ridiculous, and I think it's absolutely stupid, some of the opposition that we've been seeing for the National Fairgrounds. I know we got to listen to some of these people, but at the same token, at the same time, I'm not a big fan of some of this, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NASCAR 25. As it was announced a couple days ago that NASCAR 25 has officially revealed their cover drivers for NASCAR 25, which will release on October 14th. It will have not one, not two, but three drivers on the cover of the game once it does release. The three drivers are going to be William Byron representing Chevrolet, Christopher Bell, who represents Toyota, and Ryan Blaney, who represents Ford. They'll be the cover athletes for the game. I do not remember the last time we saw three cover athletes on the same game. If you have seen that, let me know in the comments. So maybe like NASCAR 4, NASCAR 5, or something like that. I don't entirely remember. But I think at least William Byron and Christopher Bell, they make a lot of sense, because both have been heavily involved with NASCAR 25. Byron especially has been heavily involved. We all thought he was going to be the only cover athlete that was going to be on this thing. But Christopher Bell's also been heavily involved as well. He's been in some of the dev diaries that have been released, and he's been involved with some of the videos that have surfaced as well. Ryan Blaney, while yes, I think he's the best Ford driver in the field, it definitely surprised me a little bit for sure to see that, because Ryan Blaney, I didn't think he'd be involved in the game as much, to be honest, but I think especially Ryan Blaney, who does attract a younger fan base, it does make a lot of sense, because he does have a younger fan base that is a massive fan of him. I gotta say, looking at the cover itself too, I think they did a very, very good job on the NASCAR 25 cover. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's a really solid cover nonetheless. I think it does look pretty good. I'm really hoping the game can be good. We've seen a lot of stuff released. Now the cover, the soundtrack, we're still waiting for the track list to get released at this point, which I'd expect that to get released here in the not so distant future. And we also got the driver lineups not too long ago as well. You got Cletus in the game. You got other people in the game. Like, I don't think Catherine Legg's in the game, but you got other people like Elio Castroneves and Martin Truex Jr., Jimmy Johnson were in the game. You get, of course, Shane Van Gisbergen and two in both Cup and Xfinity. But nonetheless, I think that the cover does look solid. It's not perfect by any stretch of imagination, but as more information comes out for the game, I get excited. You've been hearing a lot of YouTubers have been talking about it, who got to go and play the game, who've been really enjoying it. I'm starting to get more excited about the game, but remain cautiously optimistic because we're not entirely sure how the game's going to go, but I'm definitely becoming more cautiously optimistic about the game that is coming out soon. Looking forward to the release of this game really, really soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Austin Hill. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Daytona International Speedway on Friday night, on the last lap of the race, while Parker Kligerman / Connor Zilisch went up to pick up the victory, Austin Hill unfortunately caused one of the big crashes and incidents on the white flag of the event. Going into turn number 3, Austin Hill on the restart was kind of forced up the racetrack by Lee Honeyman, who tried to make a move to the outside, and then Austin Hill lost a ton of his momentum in ground and fell out of a shot and opportunity to pick up the win. Going into turn number 3, Austin Hill seemed to get a little frustrated and upset with the field, and unfortunately got, I believe it was Nick Sanchez, I'm pretty sure, and it triggered a massive pileup and a crash on the last lap of the event. Now, I can't entirely say it's 1,000,000% on Austin Hill, but Austin Hill once again is in the middle of another incident and another crash. Now, unlike some of the other incidents we've seen, like what happened in Watkins Glen and what we saw at Indianapolis, where he intentionally wrecked Eric Almirola and where he wrecked Michael McDowell, not intentionally, but took him and got him in a wreck at Watkins Glen a couple weeks back. That's now 3 weeks in a row where Austin Hill is in some sort of controversy in regards to an incident. Now, after the incident took place, he spoke to Matt Weaver, other reporters in the industry, and he basically said, well, I have no friends to work with when it comes to these super speedway races. That's why I didn't really have a chance and opportunity to go out there and pick up the win. I think what Austin Hill needs to realize that one reason that he doesn't have a lot of friends currently at the moment out on the racetrack right now is because of his over-aggressive driving. And plus, the other reason is because, let's not deny it here, Austin Hill is a fantastic super speedway racer who's always up front going for wins and victories at super speedways. But the other big reason to look at is because he has been in a lot of controversy over the last couple weeks. And a lot of drivers and a lot of people in the industry have been really frustrated with some of the antics that Austin Hill has presented in the last couple months as well, and I think that's why there's a lot of people who don't really like a lot of stuff that Austin Hill has been doing, unfortunately, which sucks for Hill because I think Hill is a talented driver, but at the same token, same time, if you do a lot of dumb stuff on the racetrack, chances are you're not going to be liked by a lot of people in these situations, and I think that's why a lot of people aren't wanting to work with Austin Hill as normal. They don't really care about working with him, and they don't really want to work with him at this point. So for him, I think Austin Hill just has to look at himself in the mirror a little bit in these situations. I can't entirely blame Austin Hill for the incident that took place on the track there, because it's a white flag of the race. Things are going to happen, kind of like happened to Kyle Larson and Bubba Wallace in the Cup Series race. But nonetheless, I think it's interesting that he spoke on the crash and having no friends, which I think Austin Hill did start some of that. I don't think he's entirely at fault for it, but at the same token, same time, I think Austin Hill can definitely learn to not be sometimes over-aggressive like he is, which has led to some success, but has also led to some crashes that he has kind of caused in the series. I think he has to take some blame for what happened there on the racetrack, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Honda. Now, earlier today, after Dennis Hauger picked up the Indy NXT Championship, there was, I believe, a couple people in the press release that asked about the uncertain future of IndyCar and whether Honda, and what's the update on Honda's involvement in IndyCar going forward into the future. They basically said, we've loved our time in IndyCar and will continue to support the series no matter what. We don't have really a big future. That's up to Honda at this point, but we love IndyCar racing. We think it's the best racing in the world, and we love what we've been putting on the racetrack for quite some time. Hearing that tells me a couple things. Number one, I think the questions about Honda potentially leaving IndyCar in the next couple years, I think are certainly very real because they had made no commitment to the long-term future past 2026. Because remember, Honda only has a contract with IndyCar currently at the moment through the 2026 year. And there is a very realistic chance and a very realistic possibility that Honda could leave IndyCar at the end of next year. there has been some outside rumors and speculation in recent months that Honda could potentially jump over to NASCAR and become the 5th manufacturer that could jump into the sport into the future. And I think you have to look at that Honda absolutely is looking at that at that point, because I think Honda is going to get more value of being in IndyCar and NASCAR right now than being in IndyCar currently at the moment. Despite the fact that NASCAR has had some issues with their ratings currently at the moment, they're still bringing a lot in. And even with them being a major asset behind bringing the hybrids into the sport of IndyCar, I don't think they're a big fan of the whole entire racing product, which again, Honda was really behind bringing them in the first place, the hybrid system. So I think you got to kind of look at that point being a reason why they could leave. There has been some talk about potentially we could see Trackhouse Racing in the future partner up with Honda with their association MotoGP. Obviously, they're going to be focusing with Aston Martin in the future of Formula One. There is a major possibility also that they could stay at IndyCar long term and sign an extension. Some think there's a chance they could. Others think that it's very unlikely at this point. I think there's still some big questions around that currently at the moment, whether they are going to stick around in IndyCar or they're going to leave in the future. I would hate to see them go because I think they've brought a lot to the table for the last 30 years at this point, being in motorsports in general, in the open wheel scene. But at the same token, at the same time, it wouldn't shock me or surprise me to see them just go ahead and jump ship here very, very soon. So we'll see what happens in regards to the future of Honda in IndyCar and motorsports in general. But as of right now, I think it's a very uncertain future, and they could be leaving here in the not so distant future. So we'll see what the long-term future is for IndyCar here very, very soon. We'll see if Honda sticks around past the 2026 year. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rockingham Speedway. As it was reported by Adam Stern late on, I believe it was Thursday night, that one of the people that runs a thing called Watkins said that the action Saturday when the Xfinity Series race at Rockingham during Easter weekend saved NASCAR racing at the track and believes that Cup Series racing can exist at the racetrack in the future. Obviously, there's been a lot of uncertainty around the Rockingham Speedway track currently at the moment. They have gone up for sale. There's a lot of talk that Track Enterprise and Bob Sargent could be involved in trying to buy up the racetrack currently at the moment for the future. But many people believe in the industry there is a potential possibility in the not so distant future that Rockingham Speedway could be on the NASCAR Cup calendar in the next couple of years. I think until the next gen car ends up producing a lot better racing all across the board, I will say the last couple weeks have been a lot better, but I think until the next gen car can produce great racing where multi-groove racing can be available, which to be fair, Rockingham does have multi-groove racing that is available, so it could be a very interesting race. But I'm not sure about a Cup Series race going in because the earliest you would see a Cup Series race is 2027. And I think the Xfinity Series and Truck Series have earned a right and opportunity, at least for next year, to continue doing their own thing on Easter weekend. Now, could we see that potentially change in 2027, where let's just say Rockingham maybe gets the All-Star race? That is a possibility, but then you got to kind of wonder what happens with Dover Motor Speedway, because for 2026, Dover Motor Speedway is going to host the All-Star race, which is disappointing for Dover, as I think Dover has earned the right to continue hosting a points-paying race, and they shouldn't have gotten the All-Star race personally. Nonetheless, for Rockingham, I really hope this track continues being on the schedule in the long terms. I think that they had a great revival first event. There was a lot of success for that first event as well, and I think they did a really good job promoting it. You had a sold-out crowd. Granted, the grandstands are not as big as like Daytona or Indianapolis, for example, but I think they had a very solid and a really strong crowd this time around, and I think that's a big positive for a track like that, where it can bring a lot of people and attract a lot of people to be involved in it. So I really hope Rockingham does have a long-term future in the sport for many, many years to come, because again, I think Rockingham's earned the right and opportunity to stay on the schedule long-term. We'll see what happens with the future of the track long-term, but I hope it sticks around because Rockingham is a great track. It puts on good racing for both of the lower series in particular, and if the racing gets better with the next-gen car, I think then the Cup Series could then put on some really strong, great racing. So we'll see what happens for the long-term future of Rockingham, but I hope it stays on the schedule long-term for the long-term foreseeable future, and then eventually gets a NASCAR Cup Series race very, very soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Parker Kligerman once again. Now, after Parker Kligerman technically won the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Daytona International Speedway, Dale Jr. kind of spoke about that. A reporter's industry asked about potentially Parker Kligerman in the future, drive for Junior Motorsports, and maybe getting another opportunity for JRM in the future. Well, Dale Jr. did not confirm, speaking to the media, he did not confirm that we will see him get an opportunity in the future to drive for Junior Motorsports. He's hoping that Parker is given more opportunities to race in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts season in 2026. but there is a chance and possibly in the near future that we could see Parker Kligerman be a junior motorsports driver in NASCAR Xfinity competition. Now, obviously, Parker Kligerman is really focused currently at the moment of being in the media. Of course, he is currently a co-commentator for the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto, the Xfinity Series, and then, of course, transitioned to O'Reilly Auto Parts Series for 2026. Yes, he's not been on every single race so far this year, but he's been at a majority of races, and he's been starting to do some stuff when it comes to being on pit road for NBC currently at the moment, and some of the USA coverage as well. So if he had to race in some of those events, he would have to back off on some of that. But at the same time, I think it'd be really cool for Parker Kligerman to still race in the sport. And I get for Parker, and people are going to say he should go full-time once again. I think Parker's talked about this in the past, but he doesn't really want to be full-time anymore in the sport. He likes and enjoys only being part-time currently at the moment. It would be great if he got the opportunity down the road to be full-time once again. But again, I don't think he's really interested at this point of being a full-time driver, at least at the moment right now, because of the grind, how long the season is, which makes a lot of sense. But if you've got the opportunity to drive for Junior Motorsports, and let's say drive, I don't know, the number 9 car that could be available with unknowns about Daniel Suarez, with Zilisch, of course, going full-time Cup Series racing next year, I would take that chance and opportunity to become a full-time driver, because I think, or not a full-time driver, but at least a part-time driver with a team like Junior Motorsports. They've been the fastest organization this year, and they're probably going to continue being the fastest organization going into 2026. Now, granted, with Zilisch moving up next year, they're probably not going to win as many races because the majority of the wins have come from Connor Zilisch so far this year. But I think this team will still be very solid because pretty much everyone who's gotten behind the wheel of a Junior Motorsports car, Connor Zilisch, Shane Van Gisbergen have won, Kyle Larson's picked up a win, Daniel Suarez has picked up a win. I think it'd be really cool if Parker Kligerman could get that opportunity to make some starts once again with Junior Motorsports in the future. I think it'd be great for the sport for something like to happen. I hope it does happen here in the future where he gets more opportunities, and I hope he gets to make more starts with Junior Motorsports in that organization in the not-so-distant future. Maybe be a teammate with guys like Carson Quaffle once again, maybe Justin Allgaier, and work with those guys in the future. We'll see if that happens here very soon for Parker Kligerman in the near future. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lee Diffey. Now, many of you have been on social media over the course of the last couple of weeks, but since Lee Diffey has gotten back in the booth, he's been getting a ton of criticism from a lot of people. Now, the criticism, in my opinion, has been absolutely unwarranted because of the way he talks. Now, some people try to say that Lee Diffey is from the UK, which if you actually do a little bit of research, he is from Australia. He's not from the UK. He's not a British, despite what people say about him. But it's because people get frustrated, but some people do, because of the way he talks, which I completely don't understand personally, because in my opinion, Lee Diffey is absolutely an amazing commentator. Well, he spoke about this criticism recently in an article. He spoke on the critics and kind of talked about it by saying all the negative Nellies have been calling me out. I can't control the way I speak. I can't control the way I talk. I do my job and do the best I can. And 100% Lee Diffey is right. I think the criticism is completely unjustified. Meanwhile, there are some people who would absolutely prefer listening to Jamie Little in the booth, where Jamie Little has been absolutely horrendous as a lead commentator, or Mike Joy. With no disrespect, Mike Joy probably shouldn't stop being a lead commentator not so long ago, even though it's still very, very solid. I think Mike Joy is way past his prime, and Lee Diffey right now is head and shoulders above the rest of the people when it comes to being a lead commentator in the sport. And the fact there's so much criticism toward him is definitely really frustrating to see, because Lee Diffey, like I said, has been absolutely phenomenal and amazing for sure. And again, I think he absolutely has earned the right to stay with NBC long term. And he does an amazing job. He brings the energy. He brings the excitement. We have not seen as much of that with the lead commentators and the play-by-play announcers in quite some time, or at least as of recently. And I think he does a phenomenal and great job being that play-by-play announcer that we've been all looking for at this point, who can be the future person who can really help out with that. So again, I just don't fully understand some of the negative criticism that I've seen toward Lee Diffey. I think it's frustrating. I don't really fully get it. I don't think it makes sense. And I understand why I don't really understand the frustration. I think it's completely unjustified to see people getting upset about the way Lee Diffey talks, because he does a phenomenal and fantastic job as a lead commentator, and I hope he continues doing it for many, many years to come, and continues to do it for many years in the future, because he's phenomenal at what he does. He's incredible, and I think he'll be someone for many years who will continue being great and will bring a lot to the future of the sport. Don't understand some of the criticism that he has received personally. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Bowman. Now, back at Richmond Racing, there was some contact, I believe, between Alex Bowman and Noah Gragson near the end of the event at Richmond Racing, where Noah Gragson was also kind of holding up Alex Bowman a little bit in the middle to late portion of the event. Now, Alex Bowman kind of spoke about it as well, and apparently what happened was there was an incident between Noah Gragson and Alex Bowman that took place at Nashville Superspeedway. Now, what Alex, I think, said was he actually tried to apologize to Noah Gragson for what happened at Nashville, but it sounded like he didn't fully want to hear it at that moment. And Noah Gragson, the reason that he got upset with Alex Bowman during the race is because he kind of felt like he needed to get some payback on Alex Bowman for what happened earlier in the year at Nashville Superspeedway. I do get Noah Gragson's frustration, right, because I feel like the front row cars in general, there has been a lot of bad luck for those teams and organizations as of recently because they just haven't had a lot of great runs as of late. And for Noah, what happened in Nashville was really disappointing. But for Alex Bowman, I looked back at that incident and I can't really see Alex Bowman being 1,000% in the wrong in that situation. He might have been a little bit aggressive in some ways, sure, but I can't really see where Noah Gragson is 1,000% upset with him. And the difference between Noah and Alex is, number one, Noah Gragson doesn't really have anything to lose at this point because of how bad this season has been for Noah. Noah has struggled throughout the season. After a really strong start to 2025, he has had a terrible second half of the year and has not had a lot of good runs so far this season. He's been caught up in a lot of crashes, been caught up in a lot of incidents, been a lot of terrible stuff that's going on for this 14, and things haven't gone great. But in my opinion, when you're looking at the playoff bubble in particular, you've got Alex Bowman, who luckily was able to make the playoffs. But I think that incident was one of the things that unfortunately cost Alex Bowman a really strong chance and a great opportunity to go out there and beat the guy that won the race, Austin Dillon, at the end of the day, because a lot of live traffic kind of hurt Alex Bowman in that incident in situation there. And I'm not really a big fan of that when drivers kind of affect a little bit of the outcome. And I get that the playoffs really shouldn't matter for most of us at this point. But at the same token, same time, I do get why. Again, I understand Noah's had a terrible season. He's had a really bad year so far in 2025, and I know he wants to get 2026 star on the Rhino if he's even, of course, at this team next year. There's still some big questions around that at this point right now with the uncertainty of the front row in 23-11 loss. We got the other loss with Legacy coming up in just a little bit to talk about, but I understand the frustration, but the same token, same time, I think it's a little bit petty from Noah Gragson, and I get why Alex Bowman's frustrated. He said it is what it is, but I do get some of the frustration from Alex Bowman because he got affected in a big way, and I think that's definitely something that can frustrate a driver in a big way overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ross Chastain. Now, there has been a lot of talk and conversation ever since it was announced at O'Reilly Auto Parts earlier this week. It was announced to be the official entitlement sponsor for the secondary series, taking over for Xfinity in 2026. Steve O'Donnell also spoke to Eric Estep as well about this, but there's been talk and conversation as of late that apparently there could be a potential possibility that the O'Reilly Auto Parts and the Craftsman Truck Series in the future, maybe not 2026, but the future as well, could have an increase of races that where Cup guys are allowed to run in the future. The number has not been officially confirmed at this point, but there still is a lot of talk about that currently at the moment. While speaking to the media, Ross Chastain talked about this as well. He spoke about the possibility of running more races in O'Reilly in trucks, and he said that if it is increased in the future, he absolutely will be one of those drivers that will make the opportunity and chance to run more races in the future if they do increase the number of races. I get Ross Chastain wanting to go out there and run more events. Obviously, if he does get the opportunity, chance to run more races, he certainly will drive for Nice Motorsports quite a bit. And I think you'll see him make some starts with Junior Motorsports in Xfinity once again, or the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series once again in 2026. I personally do not want to see an insane amount of races increase. I mentioned this on my video when it was confirmed that O'Reilly Auto Parts will be coming in this rule as well that's been talked about. Number one, I don't want to see an insane amount of increase. I don't want to see it go from like 5 to let's say like 12 or 13 or even half the season. I think the maximum that you can honestly do is 10, but I think the perfect number would be around 7 or 8. And there's other stipulations as well that I have mentioned. Number one, Cup guys cannot run during any of the Dash or Cash races or the Triple Truck Challenge races. I just simply do not understand why in any way, shape, or form we took that stipulation out in the first place. I think that honestly should not have gone away, and I think that should have absolutely sticked around, and they cannot run during the regular season finale or any of the playoff races, and I think that would be the perfect way to go. But I think that if you have Cup guys running, and I know there's a lot of people against Cup guys running, you do have the chance of sponsors coming in. And a big reason why Cup guys go down and run in the lower series in the first place, like Kyle Larson, like Ross Chastain, like Kyle Busch, like Corey LaJoie, for example, like other guys like Shane Van Gisbergen, and now next year probably Connor Zilisch, and Ross, and Chase Elliott, and Alex Bowman, William Byron go down and run the lower series in the first place is because mainly of the sponsorship. The sponsorship is a massive reason for that. If sponsors want these guys to go down and race in the lower series, they're absolutely going to do that because sponsors absolutely want them to do that at that point. So to me, I think this is going to be something to watch for. I don't know if it's going to increase for 2026. There's not been increased conversation if it will increase for the lower series going into the next year. But I think 2027 might be the earliest we see something like that really soon. We'll have to pay attention to this as time progresses and goes on, whether they do see an increase. But we know one driver that's going to do it. I think you'll see Kyle Busch run some O'Reilly Auto Parts race in the future. If they do increase that, maybe he'll go full-time in the future there. Who knows? But I think this is definitely going to be a big story to watch for because there is certainly a pretty good chance and a strong possibility that we could see an increase in the lower series for both the O'Reilly and the Truck Series in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, we already, of course, know that Kyle Busch did not make the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs for the second year in a row, which is the first time Kyle Busch had back-to-back seasons where he's failed to make the playoffs since he joined the NASCAR Cup Series back in 2005, where he failed to make the playoffs in 2005 and failed to make the playoffs during the 2012 season. But before the weekend even began, I think someone asked, does it matter if you do make the playoffs in the NASCAR Cup Series and have a chance to win the championship? But Kyle Busch basically does not agree with that. He says, speaking to Motorsports.com and other reporters in the industry at Daytona in the media bullpen, he says it doesn't agree that it's a statement to just make the playoffs in the NASCAR Cup Series. Because let's say you do get eliminated in the round of 16, you're really not a factor at that point. Unless you get really deep and far into the playoffs, you don't really have a chance and opportunity to go out there and get that. I 100% agree with Kyle Busch on this. I really think even only going to the round of 16 or even the round of 12, for example, I really don't think it matters too much for the system. That's why I've said for the longest time, if we are going to have the playoffs and change anything about it, I do think one thing that could absolutely make the playoffs matter a little bit more if we're going to continue having a postseason in NASCAR is maybe going ahead and only having 12 drivers make it, because while yes, 12 is still quite a few people, you're only going to have 12 out of like 30 or 35 competitive cars compared to 16, where you basically have half the field that has a chance and opportunity to go in there and make it. I just personally think that we should decrease the number of people who make it, but absolutely that doesn't matter, because if you get a win, for example, like Austin Dillon got, even if you have a bad season like Dillon's had for most of the year, granted he's had 5 or 6 top 10s this year, but if you have a really bad season, one win can get you into the playoffs, and personally, I'm not a fan of that. I think the winning you're in is a major, major issue that I have with this current format and current system at this point. And to me, it really doesn't make sense why we have the winning you're in still. And it doesn't sound like right now for 2026 with the format, we're going to be seeing a change on that. And I'm disappointed to hear that, because I think one of the biggest Achilles heels to this system in particular is winning matters way too much at this point. And I get winning matters, but I think consistency also needs to matter quite a bit as well. But the problem is, it doesn't sound like, at least for next year, they're making any changes. I know Ben Kenny has said they're still maybe making changes for the lower series, which is certainly a possibility for the lower series. Maybe trying something out in the Craftsman Truck Series, considering they don't get the most viewership currently at the moment right now, and they struggle with that as of late. I think it would not be a bad idea to try, at least in the lower series, maybe try to spice things up and make the series a little bit more interesting and more exciting there. But I think Kyle Busch is absolutely correct. It really hasn't mattered, because most of the guys who do make it, who get one win a year, haven't been really big factors. The only one who kind of maybe shake things up was Chase Briscoe in 2022, and there was some manipulation that really helped Chase Briscoe get the chance and opportunity to make it out of the round of 12 in the first place and get it to the round of 8 in the first place. Yes, he had some good runs in the playoffs, but generally was not mostly deserving after kind of a mediocre run until we got to the playoffs. And for Shane Van Gisbergen, too, I think he's going to have a solid playoff run, better than I think people give him credit for. But again, I think Kyle Busch is right in a lot of ways here, and I agree with a lot of things Kyle Busch says, because I think having the system we have, I don't think it really matters if you make the playoffs overall. I think he's said a lot of things correctly, especially like a guy like Harrison Burton making it, who didn't even make it out of the round of 16, which was not shocking and surprising. And I do agree that making the playoffs really doesn't mean as much anymore, in my honest opinion. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Legacy Motor Club. As was reported by Bob Pockers on Friday and announced as well that Legacy Motor Club has been granted a preliminary injunction against Rick Ware Racing in regards to a charter sale that had gone bad. We all know currently at the moment the Legacy Motor Club is suing Rick Ware Racing and TJ Pusher currently at the moment for a charter deal that had gone bad. Legacy Motor Club had originally said that they had signed a deal to have a third car for the 2026 season, as the organization is looking to expand to a 3-car operation for 2026. However, near the end of the time when the deal was supposed to be announced, where the charter sale was supposed to go for $45 million for that charter, Rick Ware Racing pulled out at the 9th hour, and it was announced on April 1st that they would be suing. Rick Ware Racing has come out and said that you changed the date on the document from 2027 to 2026. We thought the deal was for 2027, not 2026. But then Legacy Motor Club said, no, it says on the document that it's for 2026, but you guys are wanting to push it back for 2027 because you guys at that point would not have any charters for the 2026 year, and he would not be able to compete. This basically also confirms as well that the organization of Rick Ware cannot sell the charters to any other organization until the litigation is set, or they cannot sell the organization to sell to TJ Pusher. Remember, it was announced and confirmed a couple months back that TJ Pusher was looking to purchase Rick Ware Racing outright and wanted to make it a 3-car organization for 2027 by the end of that point. However, we have come to find out in recent months that TJ Pusher was the one that was really behind the purchase of that charter going to Legacy Motor Club in the first place. So he's trying to basically, what it looks like is he was trying to back out of the original deal. Because if you look at what's going on here and you pay attention to what's been happening, TJ Pusher is keeping Rick Ware on as one of the co-owners and one of the higher-ups of the organization, and he was going to be keeping Cody Ware in the number 51 car and not another driver behind the wheel of that car other than Cody Ware, which that told me that TJ Pusher was trying to skirt his way around this lawsuit and trying to find a way out of the lawsuit completely, which is not something that works because the judge had explicitly told TJ Pusher and the team at Rick Ware that if you guys try to mess with this and try to sell this outright without telling the courts, you can be in a lot of trouble. And it looked like, to me, from what it sounds like, it looked like that they tried to find their way to skirt the lines around the lawsuit itself. Again, Legacy Motor Club is trying to become a 3-car team for 2026 or 2027. There's been other rumors out there as well that Haas Factory Team could potentially merge with Legacy Motor Club for 2026 or buy it outright, which if that ends up happening, there is a possibility that the uncertainty around the Haas Factory Team, Cole Custer's future could be a little bit uncertain. If something like that happens and the Ford program for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series going into next year, there could be some major uncertainty around that as well. So that's a big thing to watch for as well, because that could be something that could happen, because Jimmy Johnson is really trying to get that third charter. Right now, if Legacy is able to obtain that third charter for next year, 2027, one name that's been heavily linked to that program is Jesse Love. Jimmy Johnson is very high on Jesse Love. Jesse Love, a lot of people think is very talented. I think Jesse is certainly a very talented race car driver who has done a very solid and a really, really good job with Richard Childress Racing the last couple of years. While he's not been able to pick up more than 2 wins, both of them coming at super speedways at this point. Technically won Rockingham, but got disqualified after that. I think Jesse Love is still a very talented guy. One theory that has been out there is that Jimmy Johnson could make some select starts in that third charter car, and Jesse Love could go under the wing of Jimmy Johnson and make a ton of starts in that car as well. We've seen Jesse make some select starts in Cup competition this year with Richard Childress Racing. If Jesse does, though, in fact, leave the RCR campus and go over to back to Toyota, I think one name to watch for to go to that 2 car is Nick Sanchez. They're very high on Nick Sanchez over there at RCR from what I've heard, and Nick Sanchez's name has been linked to that 2 car as of recently as well and could be a potential for a Cup Series seat as early as 2027. But does he want to go over to the culture of that program? I'm not entirely sure at this point. But when I look at this case and situation, I think Legacy Motor Club has a major advantage when it comes to this lawsuit right now, because just everything seems to be going their way right now. There's a lot of things in their favor currently at the moment right now, and you look at this case and situation, I'm not sure what happens there. Now, if Rick Ware, the team's able to continue having their charters, Cody will probably be one of the drivers. I think that you'll see Corey LaJoie have a chance and opportunity to get a ride with that team. Sam Marichal, the creator, currently drive for the Haas factory team, could be candidates for those seats in the future, with them being closely aligned with the Ford camp at this point. And I think there's some other things that probably will get confirmed in the future that I find to be very interesting as well with the Legacy Motor Club team and the Rick Ware side of things. But I find this lawsuit to be very interesting, more interesting than the 2011 and front row suit. But there's going to be something very interesting coming out with that soon, with it being announced on Thursday. We may get official confirmation on the updated preliminary injunction, and there could be a potential possibility that we could see some charter sales coming out very soon for both 2011 and front row if NASCAR is able to sell those charters once it gets confirmed. So we'll see what happens there, but I think the Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware suit is more interesting than the 2011 front row suit currently at the moment, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. Now, we talked about the story on the channel on early Saturday afternoon, but it's officially announced and confirmed that, as expected, Kaulig Racing will become the official Ram Truck Series team in 2026, and will go NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series racing for the first time in the 2026 season. It was announced and confirmed in the announcement they're going to field up to 5 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series rides in the 2026 season. It was also reported by Bob Parkers as well. They're working on a testing program for the 2026 year where they might be able to get more testing. It sounds like NASCAR is going to be a little more lenient with testing going forward next year to really help with the Dodge and Ram program coming into play. Before we talk about the Cup side of things and the potential driver lineup, let's talk about this announcement. This is a massive, massive deal. This will be the first time that we've seen Ram back as factory support and organization in the Craftsman Truck Series since 2012, when Brad Gzowski Racing was heavily associated with that in 2012. But they stuck around in the Truck Series till 2016 when he had the Zombie Rams around at that point. But then, of course, they went away at the end of the 2016 year when the new body started coming in 2017, and everyone kind of converted to the Fords, the Chevys, and Toyotas. But this will be the first time we've seen Ram as factory support since 2012. We obviously knew that Kaulig Racing was going to be the favorite to make this move, and it made a lot of sense. We were hearing rumors about teams like Brett Jones Racing getting involved with that program. We had heard rumors of other organizations like GMS Racing. It sounds like that Brett Jones Racing and GMS have kind of backed away from doing the deal at this point. And one other thing to note from the announcement as well is they are going to be the only team that will have association with the Ram program at this point. Now, could we see some potential customer service teams come in like Brett Jones or GMS? That is a possibility right now, but as of right now, Kaulig Racing is going to be the only team. For Kaulig, it makes a lot of sense at this point. This is a team that has been struggling, of course, with their NASCAR Xfinity Series program or their O'Reilly Auto Parts program going into next year. And I think that this team making this move will really help them get the Ram program up. Kaulig is a team that has been able to take a lot of risks. They said that in the release on Saturday. They said that basically that they're a team that's been able to take a lot of risks. And that is absolutely true. Kaulig Racing's made a lot of risk over the years. They jumped up the Cup on a full-time basis in 2022. They had some select starts in 2021, picked up the women AJ Allmendinger, and they've had success with their Xfinity program over the last couple years, but they've definitely been on the decrease for that, so them going over there makes a lot of sense. A big question that was answered during the announcement as well, Ram is going to be fully funding this, so it doesn't sound like Kaulig Racing is going to be having a ton of backing in this car, or at least into this. They'll probably put some funding into it, but Ram is going to be heavily involved with figuring out the drivers and other things as well around the Kaulig program. But the big question we have to ask is, what does this mean for Kaulig Racing's future in the Cup and Xfinity Series? Well, going into next year, I think the Cup program is going to remain the same. I think that Ty Dillon and AJ Allmendinger are going to stay in those cars. We know AJ Allmendinger has already been confirmed to continue driving a number 16 car next season. I would also expect that Ty Dillon is going to be full-time next year in Cup competition. Ty Dillon's had some really strong runs with the Kaulig Racing organization this year, and I think he's earned another year an opportunity to stick around with this program with how well he's been running and how much speed he has been showing so far in 2025, especially during the in-season tournament. He's had a really good run there, and he's also started bringing some sponsorship funding. There's been rumors that Freeway Insurance could potentially become a sponsor for Ty Dillon going into next year with him being closely aligned with Ty Norris, that sponsor, and unfortunately Daniel Suarez as well. The other big question we have to ask ourselves is their Xfinity program or their O'Reilly Auto Parts program. I do think this program is going to downsize from 3 cars to 2 cars next year. I think Christian Eckes is going to stay in the 16 in 2026, and I think that Daniel Dye will only be a part-time driver in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series next year. I think drivers like Will Brown, Michael McDowell, people that have driven for Kaulig this year, Carson Osbar, you name it, might get the chance and opportunity. AJ Allmendinger could also make some starts there. But what does this mean for the future? Well, let's go back to the driver lineup real quick in a second. Beginning with the future, then with Cup. Obviously, there's a lot of talk that with it being confirmed they're going to be associated with Ram going into next year. There is now a realistic possibility that they could be the future Dodge Cup team and the first big team to make this move. This could mean that they could be the number 1 team for Dodge when they do go Cup racing. There's been a lot of talk and speculation that they could be going up as early as the 2027 year, though I'm realistically looking at 2020 as the earliest they might make the move. They would have to have a body approved for 2027 in the next couple of weeks, and I don't see that being a major possibility of something like that going on at this point right now. So I think 2028 is the earliest at this point, but Kaulig would make the most sense. We thought maybe Trackhouse Racing could be one of those teams, but as of now, there's a lot of talk about Honda. We talked about Honda potentially leaving IndyCar very, very soon, and I think there's a very realistic possibility that if Honda comes in, they could be the team with Trackhouse, but Kaulig is a team that I think will absolutely be associated with Dodge if they do go Cup racing in the future, so I think they'd be the team that absolutely make the most sense currently at the moment right now. The last big thing to talk about is the driver lineup, because the driver lineup, there was nothing confirmed in the announcement on Saturday. I think one driver that will be confirmed for this team is Daniel Dye, with it being announced at Randy Dye's dealership. I think Daniel Dye will be one of the drivers. I don't see Dye being full-time in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series next year. I think he'll make some select starts next year. Maybe he runs a lot of races, who knows. But I think Daniel Dye will be one of the drivers behind the wheel, and we know Michael Waltrip will be very happy about that. But then you got to kind of look at who is available, right? Because you have a lot of drivers in the Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota camp who all have development deals currently at the moment. Could someone like Jake Garcia perhaps be a candidate for this team? I think that actually is a realistic possibility. He doesn't have a contract for next year, so maybe Jake Garcia, unless he leaves the Ford camp, maybe he goes there. Some have mentioned LeVar Scott. I think LeVar Scott would be very interesting. LeVar is very closely aligned with the Rev Racing Group over there. Not sure his ties with Chevrolet at this point, but LeVar moving up the trucks, I could absolutely see that at this point. It would be a getaway to get in there. Could we see someone like a Matt Crafton get a chance and opportunity? Who knows? One name I've seen brought up is Cletus McFarland. I would not be shocked if Cletus McFarland is one of the drivers, at least on a part-time basis at this point. I would like to see someone like him get the chance and opportunity, maybe make some truck series starts with this program. If Rhett Jones Racing doesn't ever move up, I think it'd be cool for him to make an opportunity with this program in the future. I think there's some other drivers to look at as well. You got to look at veterans like Bubba Pollard would be an interesting choice for this team. And there's other drivers that we don't know at this point. But I think the driver lineup is so intriguing because nothing's really known at this point what the driver lineup is going to look like, because trucks is so wide open currently at the moment. And outside of Ty Majeski being confirmed for the 88 truck next year and expected to be Caden Honeycutt full-time at Tricon, I don't think anything else has been confirmed at this point. So we'll see what happens with that at this point. But it's a massive deal nonetheless, and great to see that we will be seeing Dodge in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026, and we'll see how they end up doing with the Ram program going into next year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Connor Zilisch, as it was officially announced and confirmed on Saturday afternoon, and as expected, after months and months of speculation, that Connor Zilisch will be replacing for Daniel Suarez in the NASCAR Cup Series next year, and is going full-time NASCAR Cup Series racing in the 2026 season with Trackhouse Racing. The announcement stated that he has a multi-year deal for 2026 and beyond, so it sounds like it's not just a one-year deal for Connor, but it sounds like it is going to be a long-term deal for Connor, where he's probably going to have at least a 4 or 5 year deal with the organization going forward. One thing that was also confirmed in the press release as well is that Red Bull and WeatherTech are going to be the anchor sponsors for Connor Zilisch in 2026. So I would expect that WeatherTech and Red Bull are also going to up their sponsorship with Shane Van Gisbergen going into 2026 as well. They're heavily very aligned with both SVG and Connor Zilisch in a really big way. So we saw them, of course, sponsor SVG for 5 Racing Cup. I would expect that they're going to sponsor him for probably around 8 to 10 races next year, and same thing for Connor Zilisch as well, because Red Bull has a ton of money currently currently at the moment. Again, this was the worst kept secret in the industry, right? Because we all knew that Connor Zilisch was going full-time Cup racing. But in his announcement on Saturday, Connor Zilisch got emotional. He basically said he never really thought he would get the chance and opportunity to be a full-time driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. When he was a kid and he was a lot younger, he didn't think he'd make it this far in racing. He thanked Kevin Harvick in a big way for that. And he thanked a lot of people for giving him the chance. He thanked Eric Warren from Chevrolet and GM. He thanked Josh Weiss. He thanked Justin Marks and everyone who's given the chance and opportunity, like Dale Jr. as well, for him to race in this series. It has been a meteoric rise for Connor Zilisch in the Cup Series over the course of the last couple years, or at least moving up. He's been only racing stock cars now since around 2022 or 2023 in some way, shape, or form, and he has absolutely risen up so quickly. In 2023, he made his ARCA debut and nearly won that race, having a broken shocker, broken sway bar at Watkins Glen, and finished second to his best friend on the racetrack, Jesse Love. Then in 2024, he makes select starts with Spire Motorsports, has some really strong runs, nearly wins in his debut, has a flat tire, and comes back and still finishes inside the top 5. Then he gets signed with Trackhouse Racing to a development deal and makes a ton of starts at the end of the year for Junior Motorsports. In his Xfinity Series debut, he wins and dominates the race. Beats people like Shane Van Gisbergen, who are great at road courses, and AJ Allmendinger, who's good at road courses as well. And has a lot of good runs at the end of the year. Scores a top 5 at Phoenix. Scores a top 5 at Kansas. And has a lot of strong runs. The beginning of 2025 was definitely a little bit of struggle for Connor. He didn't get up to speed immediately. He had a win at COTA, but had to move people out of the way. But after his injury at Talladega, he has been absolutely unstoppable. In the last 12 races, Connor Zilisch has had 12 straight top 5 finishes in 6 wins in the last 12 races and 5 in the last 6, and has basically almost won the regular season championship, though he's currently second in the points. He's made select NASCAR Cup Series starts so far in 2025 and has been absolutely amazing in those races, at least early in them, as he qualified pretty well, had top 5 speed at COTA, but unfortunately did get caught up in a wreck with the guys replacing Daniel Suarez. And then, of course, you think about it, he had a really good run at Atlanta, finishing inside the top 15 there. And then at Watkins Glen, after having a broken collarbone, he basically missed the Cup Series race there. He is going to have a lot of pressure on him going into next year. But realistically, I think for Connor Zilisch, he shouldn't have unrealistic expectations. I think some people are going to be expecting Connor to go to Cup next year and instantly win. And I don't expect that going into next year. I think we all have to have realistic expectations. Connor Zilisch, in my opinion, I think he's going to be very, very good next year. I don't think there's any denying it. I think he'll struggle in the beginning, and by the end of the year, he is going to figure it out really, really quickly because Connor gets up to speed quickly. I think he'll take more time at Cup because of how tough the Cup field is, but he would not surprise me if he does, in fact, win a race because of how good Connor Zilisch is. It's been very rare to see a young guy come up and be this good. I can't remember the last time we saw someone this good. Maybe Joey Logano, maybe Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott then, but those guys had multiple years coming up and racing in other leagues. Connor's not been around much in stock cars, has been great. He's won the 12-hour Sebring LMP2. He's won the Rolex 24 at LMP2. He has been absolutely phenomenal. Now, other things to look at as well. He's going to have 2 really strong teammates. He's going to have Ross Chastain, who's won 1 race at least every single year since 2022. Picked up 6 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, including a Coca-Cola 600. He's been the best all-around driver for the team and organization and has been really, really good. Then you have Shane Van Gisbergen, who's been extremely good at road courses with 4 wins so far this year, the most for a rookie driver ever, who has had an amazing season for his standards, sitting in the top 25 in the points right now in regular season, and has a chance now to go to round of the 12 and try to make a run for a championship in the NASCAR Cup Series. And then you have Connor. You have a really good strong lineup for next year, and it's absolutely phenomenal. Other big things to look at as well. What's the car number going to be? What's the crew chief going to be? The car number was not announced. I would not be surprised if you see a number change around a Trackhouse. It could be a potential possibly the Connor Zilisch drives, maybe the number 88 next year or the number 87. They could put him in the 87, which I think that would make a lot of sense. That's been the identity they've been using on the Cup side of things. But there's also a chance he moves 88. Then SVG, I think, goes to the 97. Potentially they bring in the 97 up the Cup next year. As for his crew chief, nothing's been announced and confirmed. I think there's a chance you could see someone like a Rodney Childers be the crew chief for Connor Zilisch next year, although Rodney Childers has been pushing to maybe part of the Ram program. I saw on his Twitter and his X page that he was kind of trying to push for the Ram program. There's a lot of jobs available, so maybe he goes there perhaps. I think that'd be interesting, but I think Rodney Childers would absolutely make a lot of sense to work with Connor Zilisch at this point. Rodney Childers is a great crew chief, and I think Connor's going to need someone who's going to give him a lot of mentorship going into next year in Cup. Look no further than Rodney Childers. Rodney's a great crew chief, knows how to do a lot of great adjustments, and I think he can make Connor Zilisch's cars really good, and Connor could have a phenomenal season if Rodney is the crew chief. In general, though, I think this is so exciting, right, for Connor. I think he's one of the best young prospects we've seen in quite some time. I think he's going to be really good in 2026. As for the guy who's replacing Daniel Suarez, nothing's been confirmed at this point for him. I still think he's going to end up in Xfinity with O'Reilly with Junior Motorsports next year. I think he's ready to move down there at that point. I think there's no really good Cup rides open. I think he'll end up over there in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series next season with JRM. They're going to need to be someone good to be replacing him, and everyone kind of thinks that Suarez is a favorite for that seat currently at the moment. So expect Suarez to move down to O'Reilly more than likely, but things could change. There's talk about Christian Eckes going over there. That's not happening, so I think the replacement is going to be Daniel Suarez for that car. But I'm so excited for Connor to be moving up to the Cup Series next year. I think he's going to be phenomenal with Trackhouse, and I think he's going to have a great season with this program with Trackhouse next year. So that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go more of that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. How do you think Connor Zilisch is going to do in 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Kaulig going to Ram and trucks next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If any major news breaks later today, we'll discuss it live on the channel. Tomorrow, we're going to have the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series playoff predictions dropping on the channel. And then, of course, we might be doing the picks for the trucks, but might push out to Wednesday. We should have truck picks dropping as well for the race coming up at Darlington. Then, of course, on Wednesday, we will have a NASCAR news video and Xfinity race picks for Portland. And then, of course, on Thursday, we'll have Cup race picks for the Southern 500. And we'll have the paint scheme video as well for Portland and Darlington. And we also then on Friday should have a NASCAR news video as well. And then on Saturday, we'll have reactions to the Xfinity Series race from Portland, the truck race at Darlington, and then on Sunday, we'll have the starting lineup video for the Southern 500, and we'll have the review from Darlington as well. We got a lot of content coming up. People like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bo Wallace, Ross Chastain, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Frankie Muniz, Kyle Larson, Ryan Preece, Chase Elliott, William Byron, Alex Bowman. And we'll also talk about Cletus Varn, Dodge Ram, all the good stuff we'll talk about on the channel in the coming days and coming weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.